All right, ready? Okay, is it rolling? Okay. All right, class, good to see you again this morning. Today we will continue to look at the letters from the Civil War that we began analyzing yesterday. Does everybody have a copy of the letter in front of them? We're all in partners on that? All right. Well, these letters are unique because they are real. They're from online museum websites and real first-person accounts. What do we call any sort of document, whether it's a photograph or a letter or an interview that comes from an eyewitness of a certain event? Yes?
A primary source.
A primary source, kind of like primary colors of red, yellow, or blue. They're originals. You can mix them to create other things like secondary sources such as a textbook or a newspaper article, but the primary sources are the real deal, diary entry perhaps, right? So the way that we respond to events today is a little bit differently than we did back during the Civil War times, right? Let's take a look, if we can have the lights. Let's take a look at this picture of a crowd from over 100 years ago. What do you notice about this crowd? Yes, Luke?
They're white.
White, yeah, it's not a very diverse group, is it? What else, Tasha?
They all wearing the same thing.
And what's that?
Suits.
Suits? Yeah, a little more formal. Suits, ties, fedoras. Yes, Riley?
They're all big.
They're all men. Again, it's not very diverse racially or by that. Kaya, did you have an observation too? Okay, okay. How is their tone?
Serious.
Serious. They're listening, aren't they? This is at a political rally. Let's look at another another picture from a different time period, one that we might recognize a little bit more. Who is that speaking?
Obama.
Barack Obama, President Obama. And what do you notice about the crowd in this photo?
They're different races.
Okay, it's
Women,
diverse.
Men, and then photographers.
Women, men, photographers. Yes, Luke?
It's hard to find somebody without a phone.
Oh, that's
Interesting. Okay. Like, where's Waldo, right? Who doesn't use technology? So, are they still paying attention? Yes. So, what's the difference here? Selfies, yes. A lot of selfies going on. Yes, Corbin?
More people than those people actually get to watch what Obama is saying.
Interesting. Interesting. So, if we had been in the previous photograph at that time and you wanted to tell your best friend who's, say, in California about it, how long would it maybe take? Or what means of communication would you use to tell him?
Maybe like mail the letter.
Okay.
Over a week.
A letter, Tasha?
Or you could take a trip to California.
You could go out there yourself. Marcus?
Telegraph.
Telegraph, yes, exactly, with Morse code. But now, how long would it potentially take your friend to find out about it?
2 seconds.
Seconds, right? And what mediums would you use to? Twitter, texting, Facebook, Instagram, Vine, anything else, right? Old school email, yeah, that's getting pretty ancient at that point. So, a lot of times though, we use our Twitter account, for instance, to talk about pretty ordinary things, right? Like, dude, I had Cocoa Puffs for breakfast, hashtag no filter, right? And then you have your lovely picture of Cocoa Puffs, right? Who usually likes that sort of thing or retweets that?
Your family.
Right, right, your mom, right? Friends, okay. But is that going to be a super big deal to the rest of the world at the time? Maybe not, unless you're famous. When you take a selfie with your friends and you're famous, then it becomes the most retweeted tweet ever in history, right? Over 3 million retweets, almost 2 million favorites. It's pretty remarkable. Well, the people who were eyewitnesses to the Civil War, whose letters you have in front of you, didn't know that they were going to be famous someday. So it's almost like we're listening into a conversation, or at least listening into a recording of it, and it's a very private thing. You hear them writing to their girlfriend or their parents, talking about everyday sorts of things. So it's a lot more like the Cocoa Puffs, no filter picture on Instagram than it is a celebrity. But you never know when those snapshots in history are going to prove to be important. Like this photo. This was taken just after Abraham Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address. And the photographer wasn't really ready. Because remember, how long did the previous speaker talk? It was like hours, right? And then how long does it take to speak through the Gettysburg Address?
A few minutes.
2 minutes, yes. So wasn't quite ready, but he snagged him right here as he was exiting off the stage. So you never know when maybe something that you do is going to make history someday, or when you will make history and people will go back and want to find out about how you were in junior high. So today what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the letters. You've already read them, but we're going to analyze for information a little bit more. If I can have the lights again. And as you go through, I'm going to pass out these eyewitness profiles, and you'll be writing about who it was and find some of the important information. And I'll show you right here as an example. So beforehand, just we'll be highlighting along. Remember last time I read the letter from Mrs. Giles, the slave who ran away from her mistress in New York City? And so what I did was I highlighted the letter. I guess I'll take the lights off again one more time. Thank you. I highlighted the letter for what I thought would be some of the most important information. Obviously down here in the signature we see who it's from, up here who it's to, and the purpose is very important. She's saying, "Dear Madame, I suppose you wonder why that I left you." And then she gives the reasons. Does anybody remember what some of the reasons were that she was upset? Yes, Liliana.
Because she sent her husband away.
Yes.
And accused her of stealing money just because she was black.
Yes, just that. Those are two pretty big reasons to run away. Well, how does she feel now? Is she still really upset about this, or Tasha?
She's sad because she doesn't have a husband.
Yes.
But she still misses her mistress.
Yes, she does, and that's an interesting conflicted feeling, isn't it? But how does she conclude? She says everybody must have trouble at the end. So it's sad, but it's a pretty composed time. So what I did with my character profile when I wrote was at the top you're going to put the name of your author for that primary source. And I'll let it focus. Over here on the side, you're going to say what their allegiance or their affiliation was during the Civil War. So that would be Confederate or Union, right? Especially, everybody has letters from soldiers, so that'll be easier to find out. Who it's to, where this letter was written, when it was written, and in the middle, you can choose to either write about the theme of the letter or maybe some important details, but at least have one summarizing sentence in it. And so here, as I pass out the papers, go ahead and start highlighting with your partner. What do you think is the most important thing about this letter? And be looking for those details that you can fill out. So. Go. As soon as you get it, since you've read this before, we can start filling out. And then you can cut them out too. Some of them are long. Do you know what you call this ... in a letter? It's an ellipsis, and that means that the editor had to take out a large chunk of text just to fit it down. So, until they were homesick. Yes, Tasha. Yes, you may. Let's see if we can do this in about 3 minutes. You're welcome. Since we have the basic information. Is it coming back? Yesterday. Does anybody here have a family member or a friend who's in the armed forces overseas right now? Tasha? You do?
I call him my brother. He's in the Navy.
Okay. How do you keep in touch? You write letters to each other? How about you? Cousin? Does he Skype or is he on Facebook? Or? Okay. Okay. It's interesting to see who a lot of these letters were to. We have who has a letter written to parents in here right now? That tends to be a big one, right? Family. Who else? What other sort of people were they writing to at the time?
His sister.
Sister? Girlfriend, yes, I bet so. Oh, that'll be an interesting one. Want to hear more about that in a minute, Kaya. Okay, if you'll start completing the men, and we'll have 2 more minutes left on that. Just to jot down the basic idea, and then we'll be able to share about that with each other here in just a moment. Yes, Kaya? No, just go ahead. You can go ahead and highlight yours. Thanks. So, former slave owner? That's interesting. What does he talk about? Oh, he might? Interesting. What would convince him to return? Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes, and then maybe remember to look at where and when it was written, pulling that out. Once you've cut out your eyewitness profiles, then we'll be able to put them on our Civil War timeline. My letter from Mrs. Giles was before the Civil War started, so I put it on the very end. But you have 2 letters? Who are they from? The same person?
One of them, his father, he just wrote his name down, and his mother, I guess it looks like from up here, he wrote down like a nickname or something.
A nickname? Wait, what's his real name?
William.
William.
And then right up here, Billy.
Okay.
So I guess his mother calls him Biddy.
Biddy, that's cute. Oh. Does his tone change between the way that he addresses his mom and his dad?
It's his mom, he's reassuring more.
Okay.
So he stays more fast.
Interesting. Interesting.
Unless his dad can take more than his mom can of what's going on.
It's a good inference. It's a good inference. You're going to change your tone a little bit. And different details are important to different people. Do you do that, Petra? Like if you're texting one person to another? Yeah. It's interesting. You don't want them to worry. How's yours coming, Jonah? What did you think was one of the most interesting facts in your letter? Yeah? Give it a hold. Let's see who it's from. The Union Infantry? They're Georgia. In 1864 in Georgia, who do you think the general was that the soldier might have been under by that point in the war? Grant, okay. And he was up fighting Lee, remember, because Lee's about to surrender that next spring at Appomattox. Do you remember the general who had the March to the Sea from Atlanta? Yeah, Sherman. So maybe if he's writing here in summer from Atlanta, be interesting. Does he mention Sherman or anybody else in the letter? No? Okay, General Hood, commanding the rebels. Wow. It's intense. A lot of personal names too, right? Because his parents would have known who he was talking about. Huh. Who's your letter from?
Lewis Douglas.
Lewis Douglas.
Frederick Douglas' son.
Oh,
He's
that's
the
interesting.
colors man in the Union Army.
Really?
Yeah.
That'd be a interesting position to be in. Is he writing his dad?
He's writing his girlfriend.
Oh,
They later got married.
did they? That's fortunate that you have a letter from someone who survived. Does it say at the header of your letter, anybody that whether or not your soldier survived? It does? Did yours? Oh. Oh, really? Wow, that's intense. Let's see, Kaya. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, if you'll go ahead and start cutting out, and whatever information you don't have, we'll fill in later as we talk about it. And then there are magnets over on the board, and you can start to put your character up based on when they wrote their letter. So we'll fill it in on the timeline. Should be. Perfect. Nice, thanks. And as you finish cutting, I'll explain what our next activity is. The next thing that we're going to do, and you can keep cutting, but listen as we go, is imagine if we were responding to those events as the eyewitness whose letter you're reading, but we had access to modern social media at the time that is really only here in the 21st century. So, for instance, we talked about Instagram, Facebook, everything else, but what if your person was able to tweet? If I were Mrs. Giles, I would be curious about my husband, don't you think? Where is he now? At the point of that letter, when it was written, they were still separated. So I put for my tweet, I wonder where my husband is now. Did he escape and join the Union? Hashtag everybody must have trouble. And then I put her Twitter name was Jane Giles, New York, since that's where she ran away to. So if she said, did he escape and join the Union, this wouldn't have been back in 1854, would it have? At what point, Liliana, do you think she might have tweeted that? The war would have started. Yes, Riley?
Or like around 18, like
At some point after the war started, right? I'm going to put it here at Fort Sumter. It's one of our big dates to remember. The official start of the Civil War, right, in April of '61. And then if she were to tweet, my freedom is official at Mrs. Preston, her former mistress, when would her freedom have been official as a former slave from the South? Luke? Yeah. Farther down. Can somebody give me an exact date? Yeah, Corbin?
Emancipation Proclamation, January 1st, 1862.
Okay, and what did that document do?
Every slave in the South that was in a rebelling state is free.
Exactly, exactly. So she would have been celebrating at that point, I think. This is obviously up to your imagination. So as you finish your character profile, go ahead and hang them up, and then let me know, and I'll give you 2 tweets. Yes, one of the tweets needs to be about one of the significant events that we discussed: Fort Sumter, the Battle of Antietam, the Emancipation Proclamation, the Battle of Vicksburg, Gettysburg, Lee's surrender, or Lincoln's assassination. But the other tweet can be about anything that you think might have been important to them throughout the war or personally, okay? But do you have Confederate or Union? Union, all right. Union blue. There we go. Amber, did y'all finish yours? Confederate? Or, there we go. Is Douglas on post-it? Recipient? Yeah, from Amelia? No, I think that would be a fun idea. I can't wait to see it. And Union, of course. Son of an abolitionist, I think you're going to be the Union. There we go. And since there are 3 of you, y'all can do 4 if you'd like. So you just might not be able to share all of them today. There we go. Kaya, are you through with yours? Union? Riley and Corbin? Confederate. There we go. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes. Pardon? Oh, Confederate. There we go. How are y'all doing? Union? Nice. Yes. Confederate? All right. Morris. Was yours Confederate, I believe, right? Where was he from? Oh, that's right. He's writing from North Carolina at that point. Wow. Let's see. Wow, that's tragic. He was killed in Gettysburg. So what you could do for your tweets is you could maybe even tweet from Gettysburg. What do you think that was like in his final hours? That'd be intense. Do you remember how long that battle lasted, though? It was a long one. Well, that was the siege of Vicksburg, but Gettysburg lasted 3 days. 3 days. Can you draw a picture? Yeah, if you want to, but it would need to be something pertinent to the social media now. So, but yeah. Oh, hashtag duck face. Yeah, I don't know if they would be doing that. Oh, when you're done with that, we have tape right up there and post it on the timeline when you think you would have tweeted it. So, does anybody not have tweets that needs tweets? Okay. Yes. You better pay me. You shot at me. That's the least you could do. Hashtag money. When was he shot at? When he was a slave, and he's thinking about returning? Wow. Crazy? Interesting. Is he single, or is he? He's married. Okay. Is he concerned about them, or what do they feel about coming back?
He just wants to make sure that the people in school.
Wow. Wow. Look at this. He didn't spell his name the same way.
I know. I spelled this out wrong.
Okay, no, that makes sense. So he might not have been literate for very long, right? But it's cool that that's something that he wants for his own children. Wow. Yeah, there's some tape right there on the table. So just wherever you think on the timeline. Yeah, not everybody will share each thing, but does one of them reference an important event? Can't believe. Oh, yeah, he would. He would be depressed after the assassination. So. Hey guys. Okay. Who was it that had Morris, the engineer in the? I forgot who it was. Jose, did y'all have Morris, the engineer for the Navy? It's one of the Union soldiers. So. Okay, in 2 minutes, if you'll at least put up one of your tweets, we'll share those. Yes. Nice. Why did you put that? What happened to him? No pain, no gain. Oh, he did? That's intense. Was he captured, or was he still with his regiment at the time? Gotcha. It's amazing the determination is there. What state was he in at the time? In Georgia. Oh, that's right, because he was probably with Sherman. They were determined. Yes, please. Do you remember what the philosophy was called that they were fighting under? Do you remember what type of warfare they were conducting as they went with Sherman? How was that different than the other sort of fighting that they'd been doing once they cut down south? Pardon? Okay, yes. Do you remember, Jose, when Sherman was talking about destroy everything, even telegraph lines? Total war. Yeah, total war. So, pretty intense. How are y'all doing? Good. Let's see. Will you read it to me? Oh, it's not? Making money. There we go. Oh, is it? What's this one? Tell me about your serious one. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Well, and they did, because Gettysburg was costly for both sides. That's why it was tragic. I mean, even though the Union won that battle, you see Lincoln addressing that a few months later, the Gettysburg Address. It was a very costly victory. All right, if you'll go ahead and hang up your tweets, and we'll share about our people. When you and your partner come up, I'd like for one of you to talk about the letter itself and the other to read one of the tweets. And when you say the letter, because we're summarizing, I would recommend following something similar to this template. You know, in this letter from 1854, Jane Giles, a former slave, writes to her mistress about why she ran away. It's very concise. And then you might add an interesting detail like she's been separated from her husband and still hasn't found him. Something personal like that. So does any pair want to come up first? Tosh and Amber? Okay. Tell us about your character.
my character, Coleman, his last name is Coleman, he was a doctor. And he wrote to his sister about the war. His sister's name was Lucy. And he was telling her about how bloody battles he had seen and people he had to help.
He was a doctor. So are we talking like dozens of people that use it?
Lots of people. There was a number, 6,000.
6,000 in that one battle?
Yeah, and he was sick himself, and he was sick as well.
Wow. Heavy load. What was one of his tweets then, you think?
If I were Lee, I would have shot them all. Hashtag stupid Yankees, hashtag bang bang.
Yeah, that was probably the sentiment of a lot of them. Very cool. Thanks, Charles. Who else wants to share? Yes. Okay. Louisiana, Noelia?
I'm good.
This is about Jason Morris writing to his wife, Amanda, about how he got sick for 3 days and he recovered, how they got captured prisoners, and 10 cents for any amount of bacon.
Hey, bacon. That's worth writing about, right? That's a really long letter, and there's some ellipses. How many of you have a period, like ellipses in that? Does anybody remember what that means? Again? Yes.
The letter was really long. The editor had to take out.
Okay, the editor had to take out a lot. So, but she would probably be interested to know about the price of groceries, right? So, what was one of her tweets, Lillian?
Visit my family, for when I return, I shall return with 800 pounds of bacon, thousands of kisses, hashtag bacon, hashtag missing my birthday, hashtag food.
Wow. Yeah, somebody's homesick. Why did you put it so far down on the end?
Oh, she put it. Oh, I guess because like I said, when I return from after the war,
Okay. And that's 1865,
the
so
war ended in the end of 1860.
good. Remember where did the war officially end? Appomattox Square up here in Virginia. Excellent. Excellent. How about can the team about Team Douglas in the back tell us about that?
Yeah, y'all are saying.
This is really interesting. This is from a Union soldier. This will be our last one, and then we can come up and look at all the tweets. But Allie, who is this?
Lewis Douglas was the son of Frederick Douglass, a big abolitionist, and he was in the Union. He had been in 2 fights and unhurt, but he saw a lot of people die, and he was writing to his girlfriend about how he really missed her.
Say all.
And then like,
Did he make it though?
yeah,
Oh,
they got
okay.
married later. Afterwards, that's a slim chance of surviving. And he wrote about how he misses her farewell and hopes he doesn't die, and he's dying for a good cause if he does.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Marcus, what do you think?
Jacob's gonna read it.
Oh,
Amelia loves Lewis. Lewis, miss you, bae, and then hashtag when you gonna put a ring on it.
oh. He's a little preoccupied right now, you know. Very nice. Very cool. Why do you think like there were such big themes, but then they're also writing about things like the price of groceries, or there's what we did on this weekend down, you know. Why do you think that might be that it's such a mix of big and little things?
Because some people weren't in the war and they didn't have people in the war, so they're just writing to friends.
Okay.
And some people were writing from the war to other people.
Right, sharing. But one interesting thing is y'all's letter was not sent just the paper. What else was sent along?
Birds and pigs, and one time he sent corn.
Really? Really? He sent corn in the letter. What do you think that says about conditions back home?
It's pretty bad back home.
Yeah.
Even speculation is might join the armies and help get money back.
Definitely. It was hard times for everybody, especially on the front lines, but back home as well. All right, well, in the remaining time, let's come up and look at all these profiles and tweets. Is there anything that your eyewitness would have retweeted?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Actually, a lot of people feel that way.
We did too, but no.
Just lost the Hashtag your mom, hashtag.
Lewis is
Hashtag
bomb.
bacon.
What? Just got paid today. Hashtag make it rain. Friend dad today. Who said make it rain? Right here at Lewis is bomb.
Okay.
We'll put down over there.
Battle of maintaining this freaking buddy. Hashtag blood love at Boss Nation CGC.
Amber. And you guys we get read out.
Stand on my tippy toes.
Like cornfield salty.
Come up here.
I want some chicken. Hashtag I want chicken.
I like that one.
Food here stinks. Feeling like chicken. Hashtag I want some chicken.
Who
Hashtag
kept writing about
KFC.
chicken?
What?
Somebody keeps writing about chicken.
We already got chicken with theirs. Hashtag, I mean, Liliana, was it yours about chicken?
No, I didn't write about chicken. I wish I did though.
Raise your hand if your person talked at all about food in their letter.
Bacon.
The bacon.
We had a
What do you think bacon can make bacon?
What do you think that meant, if that's one of the big things that they're talking about?
Most,
They're hungry.
They're probably hungry, right?
Food was scarce.
Food was scarce, yes.
some of the food came from some of those southern, not really the plantations, but southern farms.
Right.
And like, most of those have gotten destroyed and there's nobody to work them.
No, that's a good guess. All right, if you'll all take a seat then. And we'll leave this up for a little while so we can look at it throughout the day. It's interesting, isn't it? Keep your letter. We won't be turning that in. So who knows then when you go on to be famous someday for acts of valor or whatever you end up doing in your futures, who knows if maybe someday people will think, oh, what did they take selfies with or about? What were they tweeting about in their day? So it's an interesting thought, isn't it? Things that are important to us now. Ultimately, though, even though we talk about Cocoa Puffs or the Oscars or anything else, what do you see the biggest themes being in the letters overall? Family? Friends? Food? Yeah. Concerns about the future? They're fighting for what they believe in. So at the end of the day, those things are probably important to us too. That's interesting to keep in mind as we tweet. So I hope this has been fun. They're people just like we're people now, and that's one of the things that makes history really interesting. So.